Tell you what, guys, I hope you guys are having a good day, first of all, but if you're not flexible this time of year, you're not going to have anything. It's sometimes you got to have a plan, and then you got to throw it all out the window and just move on. And I've done that. I did that for about 3 or 4 things in the past 4 days, but I just had an aha moment. I think the best way to go about this is just break it down piece by piece. I mean, we've done quite a few things. Like we thought we had a solid plan, and then I started watching the weather and just seeing how things were going, seeing how things were producing. And this kind of dovetails off of the previous couple of videos ago I did, where it was like, failure is not an option, make a tough decision. And that's what we did. So I'm gonna go around and show you these things and then explain to you why we changed them. And I'm gonna go with the most blaring one of all of them first. You can see where we got our garden bed ready over here, and we've got the ground all worked up and everything. I got it built, and then I slid it right over here. And it was hard to do. I wasn't really wanting to do it, but it just made sense in the grand scheme of things. And this is part of like having a plan and knowing what you're gonna do. First things first, I would not have moved it over there if it didn't semi-match the slope. And much to my surprise, it actually was a little bit more level than it was over here. So we were able to just slide it over, no harm, no foul. Now, one issue is the chickens won't be able to clear that area. But as you can see over here, it's not a big deal. I mean, we've got it covered at the bottom, and it's not an issue. There's, you know, those plants are not gonna grow up through the top. And if they do, we'll cross that bridge. But I have yet to have that happen when I put something deep like that on top of the ground. And I mean, it was funny. My son was off school that day, and I had him out here helping me, and we were cleaning up and just doing, you know, basic fall stuff, getting ready for fall and really finishing up planting. And I looked at what we were doing, and I thought to myself, okay, this bed, which is the first bed, we're gonna plant onions and garlic in it, right? And that was always the goal. But then I started thinking about other things that I was gonna plant in the garden and where I wanted to put them. And then I came across in my head sweet potatoes. And the sweet potatoes are, for us, that's one of the #1 crops that we want to grow. Always. We always want to give them priority and the best chance for survival. And I started thinking about it, and I was like, okay, if I plant my onions and garlic in that original spot, because we have to remember, plant my sweet potatoes in this bed like I do like I did this year, they did great. It gets a lot of sun. It's hot. It's just, they're really happy here. And now we can't grow them in this bed anymore just because the vines will go crazy and just kind of take over everything. But if we put a bed in front of it, then clearly we can go ahead and plant here next year, which will kind of give us our fallback spot over here, another year to get the soil uncompacted. So it's going to work out really good for that. But you got to get those sweet potatoes in the ground here. I like to get them in as early as possible. And first of all, so I can get them out as early as possible, because it worked out really good for this broccoli bed behind us. We had plenty of time to harvest the sweet potatoes, let it rest for a couple weeks, get the broccoli in, get them shaded. And I mean, we're on our way to getting broccolis. They're really growing a lot faster now that it is cooler during the day. So we started thinking about it, and I said, well, if the onions and garlic generally come out around June, then we can't put that bed there and plant it, because then we won't be able to get our sweet potatoes until June, and it'll just kind of set us back on our ultimate plan. So we had to move it, and we had to just kind of go with the flow. And it's gonna work out just fine. We're still gonna build another bed here. That's 100% gonna happen. But what we're gonna do instead is we're gonna wait a while, and then we're gonna build it, and then we're gonna plant in the early spring. We'll do like we did last year, where we put some cabbages and lettuce in it probably. Because that's the one good thing about expanding your garden is if I was really happy with the spot that I was in, because you have to, I mean, if you look at it, my yard gets a fair amount of shade. And when we find something that really performs well in an area, we like to take that over and just kind of run with it as much as possible. So we'll be able to do that again and in this spot, and then we can kind of flop those back and forth, but it's going to give us a lot more options. But that's why we moved our bed last minute. I mean, I'm talking about last minute. I put off going to get a load of dirt to do it. I was actually just about to get in the truck, and I kind of was looking around and I was like, no. But, you know, it is what it is. And since I'm talking about it right now, I'll show you what I did in the bed. All I did was lay the cardboard on the bottom. I dumped all my old pots in there. I put some more cardboard on top. I put the scrap wood piece in there. You know, there's 2 pieces of scrap wood. I wasn't going to use them. And just threw those in there. Any kind of cardboard I had. Dumped some old plants in there. You can see we had some here. And then we'll just cover the rest up with a load of soil. Super simple. And that's one reason why we want to wait to do the other bed, because we'll have more pots and stuff like that, like plants that maybe failed or something over the year. And then we can kind of get those going and just kind of dump that soil in there and just help with it. It is what it is. But there's also more changes that we had to do last minute. In that same video I referred to earlier, we pulled out the lettuce plant or the tomato plants and dropped some lettuce in. And that's fine, but then we had all the other tomato plants back there, and I just split second came to the conclusion that it was time to pull them. And I mean, it was a real simple ask at that time. I mean, I haven't even had time to get rid of them yet. They're still sitting right there. And I maybe pulled 6 or 7 green tomatoes off of it. This is the same thing. As I went through and I started making this decision. And well, why I made the decision is I was looking at the Brussels sprout bed, and you know, I've been fighting to grow Brussels sprouts. I think this is the 3rd or 4th year now. I think it's the 4th year. I think the amount of years changes, but it's been a while, and I've never really had a super successful harvest. But I started looking at it and I was like, okay, it's starting to get cool. We've got 3, maybe 4 weeks before our first frost. Okay, we're coming down to the wire. There's only a handful of tomatoes on here, but more importantly, these plants back here, these Brussels sprouts that are amazing, so far amazing, they need light, and they were getting shaded out when the bulk majority of the light was coming in. So therefore, before we get cold, I can get 3 more weeks of good, strong sunlight on those plants, and that's what we wanted to do. And just to show you, they're not all great, and the spacing got jacked up, to be honest. But if you look at this plant in particular, which has been unhindered in the amount of light it gets for the most part, it's the biggest Brussels sprout plant we've had yet. And then if you go down the line, these roughly are about the same size they are come December-ish, maybe even January when we grow them. So we want to give these the best possible chance. I mean, I'm going to be honest, I'm tired of fighting with it and I'm not going to give up. But that was one way that we could ensure that that was going to happen. That we were going to be able to 100% have a better chance. Not definite harvest, but a better chance at getting a good harvest off of them, or some kind of edible harvest. You know, last year we got Brussels sprouts that were like that big. And, you know, that's not really going to do it for me. So we made the decision to pull those tomatoes up. Now, if you remember, the goal with this bed was to go ahead and get some lettuce in here, something quick to grow it, finish it, cut it, mulch it, fertilize it, put it to bed for the winter, and then come back in the spring and plant. That's the goal for this bed, and that goal has not changed at all. And what this is going to allow us to do is we're going to come back and we're going to sow some lettuce in this bed right here. Now, I told you guys I had a miniature lettuce. Let me get the lettuce real quick. I'll tell you the exact name of it. So we got a Tom Thumb bib lettuce, and it's not my bib is not my favorite, but it's a 48-day variety, a mini lettuce. Each head of lettuce is about for a size of an apple or for a salad. So it should work out pretty good. It's a quick grow. And what I find a lot of times is these smaller plants grow a lot faster, and this is what we really want to do, because if I put them in the ground today, they germinate in 7 days. We have 48 days after that. We get a light frost. Now remember, I have a cover that I can put over here to ensure that they don't get bit by the frost and speed up that process even more. And we were probably going to end up taking advantage of that. And then we'll just let them grow. And we'll have a head of lettuce. And then once we get done eating it, we put it to bed. So that's change number 2 we did. Excuse the mess, we're doing a little bit of remodeling around here. And another change we did is we went ahead and planted the greenhouse. We already had the spinach over here, which is just germinating. We put some lettuce and peas back there, which are just germinating now. And then I had this tray of bok choy and kale, and we just went ahead and threw it in the ground. So we've got a row of bok choy going right down the front, 2 kale plants, 2 tiny ones there and there, and then the rest are old mustard greens that we had. It was multiple reasons for that, but the biggest one is if it's already getting cooler, then we can go ahead and get them in the ground in there. They can enjoy that heat a little bit longer and grow. It's going to get pretty warm in there, so it might help out to kind of speed it up. But the other thing too is we've got plenty of those plants and we're not in danger of running out whatsoever. So I wanted to take a chance and see what happens. I may actually come out, since we have in that seed starting tray, I've got 4 more rows, which is equivalent to 4 8-foot rows of bok choy left. I may end up just dropping some in this garden too, I don't want to waste it, and it'll save me on my lettuce seed, because I can't eat but so much lettuce so fast if it comes down to it. You know, it's not like the spring where you can kind of drip it piece by piece. You may have to harvest it all at once, and I don't really want to do that. So we may do that just to kind of ease the pressure. They're already growing, no need to waste them. And we don't want to put the kale in there though. That's important. The kale we would not put in there, and I'm going to tell you why. If we were to put the kale in here, then my plan to let this garden bed rest would fall flat instantly, because the kale will sit there all winter and grow, and then I'm not going to cut it. I think this is an important thing to remember about yourself, is like, you got to know how you are. And if my kale is growing good and it's winter and we're not getting a whole lot of vegetables, let's say we have a cold winter and it's one of the few things that's really surviving, then I'm probably not going to get rid of it, and then that just kind of defeats the whole purpose of letting that bed rest. So we're not going to put the kale in there. We have other places we're going to put kale once it gets a little bit bigger, but we're not going to put it in there. Subject of the greenhouse, we also went ahead and started more onion seeds, and I put them in here because we're getting slower germination now, and it's warmer in here, so it should speed up the germination a fair amount. And I mean, this tray right here is about roughly 6 days old, and we have no germination at all. This one is just a couple hours, but last time I did this, in about 4 days, we had some germination. I'm not seeing anything, so the heat in here should help speed this process up a bit, and then that should get us going good for our onions. And I can do these inside, but it's easier to do it out here. I mean, look at the sun hitting it, you know. That's the best thing you can do for seedlings and stuff like that. Just give them that sunlight as much as you can. And if we have to move them inside to speed up the process, we will. But again, we've got at least 3 weeks of them to grow in here before the frosts come. And then even then, we can cover them in here, shut the greenhouse, and it's still, we probably have, before we get a frost in the greenhouse, I would estimate that we have about 2 months before we get a frost in the greenhouse. That's a big difference. But we got to remember, it's still going to get cold in there, and then it's going to yo-yo and get really hot and cold, hot, cold, hot. So it may help to kind of speed up the process in there. I don't know. We're going to find out. You know, in the fall and spring, it's really important that you take and you look at your weather and you make decisions based on your weather for yourself. And sometimes you may have a plan, but I'm telling you, if it's one thing, we talk about this in the Backyard Gardens podcast. I talk about it on here. And I know Batavia talks about it on her channel at Be Better Gardens, that sometimes you just got to change the plan. And when you see that the frosts are coming or the weather is getting significantly cooler or stuff like that, you just got to go on and just do it. You know, it's like we did an episode recently, I think we called it, you know, looking forward in your garden, something like that. And that's all what we were talking about. You know, you look and you anticipate what the weather is going to be, and then you see the forecast. So you're always like 1 to 2 steps ahead of what nature is doing to the best as that we can. You know, we can't control nature and we don't know what she's going to do, and it can change on a dime. But these are the things that will help you to be a more successful gardener and to be more productive. I don't want to say successful. I think productive is more like it, because everybody's goals are different. You know, your goal might be to get a couple heads of cabbage. My goal is to get as much cabbage as I can possibly can amongst everything else. So it varies from person to person. But as far as like productivity, I think this is one of the things that really helps with productivity, because we're trying to stay ahead of it, and we're really getting things in the ground at the optimal time. You know, and it's not just growing time, it's also germination temperature. You know, like the growing temperature is one thing, but the germination temperature is a little bit different. And I know it's hard to know off the top of your head, and you shouldn't know these things off the top of your head. I have no clue. But after I've read a lot of them, what I've noticed is I know that, for instance, cabbage grows really good between the temperatures of like 68 and 82, which is a huge swath. But it germinates really good between, I think it was like 76 and 85. And so if you think about it, in the way that we garden, if you're putting your seed in the ground early, it's going to be warmer. And then as the seed germinates and it grows, it's going to be cooler and cooler outside. And so nature's already provided that seed with the ability to handle that. And I think that's something that we need to think of as well. Just like my onions, they like to germinate when it's warmer, but they can live right through the winter here if they're strong enough. And that's an important thing to know. So just if you see something coming up and you're in a southern area or you're around me or something, change what you're doing based on your weather. You know, you wouldn't go out and plant a brand new tomato plant if you had a hurricane coming your way, right? Or a severe thunderstorm. You'd wait a day. Same thing.